Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are unpacking a story that sounds like something ripped straight out of a geopolitical thriller. But it is very, very real.
It really is.
Imagine a sophisticated digital weapon capable of paralyzing an entire major U.S. city. Not through a missile, but through a constant, overwhelming digital flood.
Yeah.
And just days before the 2025 United Nations General Assembly, an event that brings nearly 150 world leaders to New York City, the Secret Service discovered and neutralized exactly that, a massive clandestine telecom network operating right under Manhattan's nose.
That's a powerful image, and it's apt. This wasn't just some rogue spam operation trying to run a simple phishing scam.
No.
Our sources, which detail the extensive operation run by the Secret Service's Advanced Threat Interdiction Unit, they describe this takedown as revealing a new frontier of risk, basically the weaponization of basic communication infrastructure. Our mission in this deep dive is to get past the headlines, really uncover the essential intelligence. We need to figure out how this incredibly sophisticated system worked, why analysts suspect a hybrid operation involving state actors and organized crime was behind it.
That makes this fascinating.
It is. And why this event is a crucial, maybe catastrophic warning sign for urban security across the entire United States, not just New York.
And what immediately elevates this from, let's say, a criminal bust to a national security event is the sheer overwhelming scale. I mean, just look at the numbers. When agents executed the coordinated raids across the New York metro area, they didn't just find a handful of hacked routers or something. They seized over 300 dedicated SIM servers.
300?
Yeah, packed with more than 100,000 active SIM cards. The volume alone is just mind-boggling.
It really is.
But the capacity is truly terrifying. This thing was capable of generating, routing, and processing up to 30 million text messages per minute.
Per minute. That staggering number is precisely why the Secret Service, whose primary mandate includes protecting global events and dignitaries, they had to step in.
Absolutely.
This operation was clearly about digital sabotage, mass disruption. The system posed an immediate and potentially catastrophic risk to New York City's ability to communicate and, crucially, its ability to respond to emergencies, especially during a major global summit like the UNGA.
Right. The timing is key.
Exactly. Special Agent Matt McCool, who was a key figure in the investigation, he compared the potential fallout to the cellular blackouts and communication vacuums we saw after the 9/11 attacks and later during the Boston Marathon bombing.
That's a chilling comparison.
It is. But the difference here is that in 2001 and 2013, those failures were reactive, right?
Yeah.
The network collapsed under unexpected usage spikes.
In
this scenario, the attackers would have been able to force that kind of systemic failure at a time and location of their choosing, turning a diplomatic event into a complete security nightmare.
Okay, let's unpack this operation then, because the timeline itself shows incredible investigative patience, really, and persistence by federal authorities. Right. This was not a quick smash-and-grab arrest.
Not at all.
It was a methodical, month-long effort to map an invisible enemy. Our sources outline this long-term investigation run by the Secret Service's Advanced Threat Interdiction Unit.
Yeah, the operational timeline spans roughly from early spring to mid-September 2025. It started quietly back in the spring when the Secret Service first began investigating what they termed unusual telecom anomalies.
What does that mean exactly? Anomalies?
Well, we're not talking about typical spam levels. They were observing sustained, irregular spikes in SMS traffic and highly irregular cell activity across the New York metro area. This pattern, thousands of new, short-lived SIM identities suddenly appearing and disappearing, it immediately flagged sophisticated automated operations.
Yep.
And it flagged a severe risk to senior officials and the national security infrastructure, which falls squarely within the Secret Service's mandate, you see.
And that diligent monitoring paid massive dividends, clearly. By early summer, the agency had successfully traced these digital anomalies back to their physical origins, a network of multiple suspicious sites.
Right, including vacant apartments and some hidden facilities scattered across the region.
Vacant apartments.
Yeah.
So this is where the physical reality of the threat really sets in. They're using cheap, easily accessible real estate to hide this industrial-scale digital weapon.
Exactly. Low profile. And as the calendar turned to August, with the UNGA rapidly approaching, that's a security event that pulls resources from every corner of federal law enforcement, that investigation intensified dramatically.
The clock was ticking.
Absolutely. They had to neutralize this threat before nearly 150 world leaders arrived in Manhattan, and this urgency forced the formation of a unified interagency task force. This wasn't just the Secret Service anymore. It included DHS, the FBI, NYPD, all aligning their resources and intelligence capabilities.
And that cooperation culminated in the coordinated raids executed in mid-September. The sheer scope of the takedown is impressive. These strikes were executed simultaneously across multiple locations.
Within a 35-mile radius of the UN headquarters in Manhattan, that simultaneous action was key to ensuring the entire network was neutralized at once, prevent any part of the operation from being remotely wiped or, moved.
Smart.
And the seizure data truly defines the scale and the danger. We know they captured the 300-plus SIM servers, technically known as SIM boxes or SIM farms, and the 100,000 active SIM cards ready to go. But Agent McCool, speaking on the operation, noted something crucial. They also found vast quantities of cards waiting for deployment. This wasn't a finished product.
Wow. So it could have gotten even bigger.
Much bigger. This is powerful evidence that the operators were preparing to double, maybe even triple the network's disruption capacity. This wasn't a static threat that had reached its peak. It was an escalating enterprise designed for massive expansion.
That just makes you realize how well-funded this whole enterprise must have been.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking millions of dollars in highly specialized hardware, data contracts, the sheer volume of SIM card purchases.
Oh, significant investment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But let's talk function. The core capability of these 300 servers was basically to act like industrial banks of mock cell phones.
Right.
They're remote control devices that can simultaneously generate mass calls and texts. And perhaps more importantly, they are used to mask highly encrypted communications for criminal groups globally.
Okay.
However, in the context of UNGA, their primary weapon was clearly their ability to take down cell towers or overload key network signaling nodes, forcing a regional cellular blackout. This isn't incidental damage. This is infrastructure warfare.
The idea of 30 million texts per minute flooding into a finite geographical area, it's just staggering. It is by definition a massive denial of service, or dossier attack, aimed squarely at the entire local network infrastructure.
Exactly. And McCool was very clear that the immediate effect would have been jamming the critical 911 lines, blocking the ability of emergency response teams, fire, police, medical services to coordinate their efforts during a crisis.
So imagine a major incident happening during UNGA, maybe even unrelated, and the city's ability to respond just collapses into silence because of this.
That's the definition of catastrophic failure.
Precisely.
And the hybrid nature of the threat, and it's underscored by what else was found on site, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just tech gear.
No, not at all. Agents didn't just seize technical equipment, they also secured illegal firearms, significant quantities of cocaine, along with specialized computers and burner phones. This is really key evidence.
Okay, so what does that point to?
It suggests a clear link not just to technical espionage operations, which need secrecy, but also to transnational crime, potentially cartels or deeply entrenched organized criminal enterprises. The tech complexity plus the criminal elements, it points to a sophisticated, maybe mutually beneficial arrangement.
So, Secret Service Director Sean Curran summed up the tactical victory perfectly then. He stressed that the measure of success was purely prevention, ensuring the immediate threat to the global summit was neutralized.
Exactly. The tactical decision was clearly eliminate the imminent danger, the physical capability first, worry about building a prosecutable case later, shut it down before UNGA started.
To really grasp the gravity here, especially for, listeners who might only think of SIM cards as those little plastic chips in their phone, we need to dive into the technical mechanism. We need to explain simply how a SIM farm works and why it's so much more than just an advanced spam machine.
Absolutely. That's key. When we talk about a SIM farm, we are discussing highly specialized industrial hardware, these SIM boxes or gateways. These machines are designed to house hundreds or even thousands of SIM cards in a single, often rack-mounted system.
So it's like consolidating massive amounts of mobile identity.
Precisely. And communication bandwidth into a single, remotely controlled physical box that could be tucked away in some suburban apartment somewhere.
And the economic driver. Usually the first factor is bypassing international call fees, right? That's the traditional use.
Exactly. That's often the starting point. It's cheaper to simulate a local call or text using a local SIM card than routing it legally across international borders. That generates enormous profit for the operators, which then funds the infrastructure.
Right.
But the key technical danger lies in the illusion they create. From the perspective of the telecom carriers, think Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, they don't see one big server running in operation.
What do they see?
They see thousands of individual phones or unique subscribers suddenly popping up on the network, sending messages, trying to make calls, often cycling through usage patterns designed to mimic real human behavior.
Ah.
This rapid rotation of identity, or what we sometimes call automated SIM swapping, it frustrates traditional tracking methods that rely on identifying a consistent single device or a predictable user pattern.
So the illicit uses just explode past basic financial fraud then. While they're definitely crucial tools for massive scams, phishing, general fraud, which connects back to that organized crime element we mentioned,
Right.
the sheer scale of the New York network demonstrated its potential as an outright weapon, a weapon against digital infrastructure itself. It's the difference between a minor irritant and a full-blown systemic attack.
Yeah, and that systemic attack capability focuses on the speed and volume, that 30 million messages per minute figure. We need to explain why that's so dangerous. Most people assume that volume just congests the network, makes calls slow, maybe drops a few.
Yeah, like a busy day.
Right. But the true target here is not the voice and data pipelines themselves. It's the control layers of the network, the signaling.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and technical. You're talking about overwhelming the signaling protocols that manage the network.
Precisely. Modern cellular networks, whether it's 4G LTE or 5G, they rely on highly sophisticated internal protocols. Things like SS7, Signaling System 7, or the newer diameter signaling protocol. These protocols are like the nervous system of the cellular network.
Oh.
They don't carry your voice call directly, they carry the instructions. Where is this user located? Is this call allowed? How should I route this message? Is the 911 service available right now? All that management stuff.
So if you hit the network with 30 million unique transaction requests per minute, even if they're just short texts,
Yeah.
you aren't just filling up the data pipes.
No, you are overwhelming the systems designed to manage and route all the traffic.
I thought.
That's the critical distinction. That massive sustained signaling flood causes cascading failures in the control system. When the signaling layer collapses, the network can no longer process essential functions like identifying a location of a 911 caller or connecting emergency services at all.
And that's how this system forces a cellular blackout.
Exactly. It stops the network from intelligently managing itself, leading to that paralyzing, widespread inability to communicate the exact scenario McCool referenced regarding 9/11 and Boston.
Okay. Beyond the raw speed and the technical DOS capability, the anonymity factor has to be paramount here too. These farms facilitate that rapid SIM swapping and automated anonymous routing of encrypted traffic. That seems crucial for any sensitive operation.
Absolutely crucial. For state actors or sophisticated criminal groups, this system provides layers and layers of deniability. If a foreign intelligence operative wants to communicate with an agent on the ground in Manhattan, routing that traffic through a network of 100,000 constantly rotating throwaway SIM cards, it makes attribution nearly impossible in real time.
And for criminals.
For cartels, it means they can coordinate smuggling operations, money laundering, even extortion, without leaving a traceable digital trail back to a specific identifiable group or facility. It's operational security for them.
The Secret Service warning that coupling a telecom blackout with another physical-oriented UNGA could be catastrophic to the city. That really drives home this new reality, doesn't it? It goes way beyond simple crime.
Oh, yeah. It paralyzes transport, it cripples emergency services, and it has the power to sow immediate mass public panic and destabilization.
That capacity for societal destabilization.
Mm.
It seems that's why experts universally agree these SIM farms are no longer just advanced tools for financial cybercrime.
Exactly. When deployed at this scale, with this sophistication near critical infrastructure like the UN during the General Assembly, they are explicitly being used as weapons against digital infrastructure in modern hybrid warfare scenarios.
So it's a test or preparation.
Could be either. It's an easy, relatively low-cost way for an adversary to test defenses, probe vulnerabilities, and potentially disable critical national functions without firing a single shot. It blurs all the lines.
So given the sophistication, the level of funding required, and that unnerving combination of high-tech espionage capability mixed with hard criminal contraband like cocaine and illegal firearms, the essential question becomes, who was actually behind this thing? Authorities haven't named anyone specific, But the deep analysis points toward a very complex answer, doesn't it?
It definitely moves beyond just a simple criminal gang running a scam. The consensus among analysts strongly favors the hybrid operation hypothesis.
Hybrid operation. Okay, what does that mean in this context?
This model suggests that a foreign government, or maybe a nation-state actor seeking to execute a high-impact operation, may have outsourced or collaborated with existing criminal syndicates, like the ones potentially tied to the drugs and weapons found on site. They'd handle building and running this massive physical network.
The benefit there, of course, for the state actor is plausible deniability.
Exactly. The state actor provides the high-level intelligence, the motivation, perhaps the initial funding, but the day-to-day operation is handled by criminals. If they get caught, it can be dismissed as just transnational organized crime. Very convenient.
Right.
So let's look at the three primary categories of perpetrators analysts identified. First, you have the nation-state actors.
Okay.
Their motives are classic geopolitical interference, maybe espionage against UN delegates, testing U.S. hybrid warfare capabilities, or creating highly deniable covert messaging channels for their intelligence agents on the ground.
And have we seen this kind of thing before?
Our sources mention similar sophisticated setups being identified and linked to state operations originating in Eastern Europe, Africa, and parts of Southeast Asia, often used to bypass sanctions or gather intelligence. So there's precedent.
Okay, category 2.
Second, you have the organized crime and cartels.
Sure.
Their motivation is simpler. Profit, pure and simple. Extracting massive amounts of revenue from fraud, money laundering, and maybe selling anonymous high-security communications as a service to other illicit groups.
And the evidence for that?
The physical seizure of cocaine and illegal firearms is the smoking gun supporting this link. They were clearly running multiple criminal enterprises simultaneously out of these facilities. It wasn't just a sim farm.
Got it. And the third possibility?
And finally, analysts have to consider terrorist networks. Their motive would be coordinating anonymous attacks, maybe, and overwhelming emergency services during a major crisis for maximum chaos and effect.
But how likely is that?
Analysts suggest this group is the least likely to be the sole actor, simply because the immense sustained funding, the complex logistical supply chain, and the high level of technical expertise needed to operate a 300-server, 100,000 SIM network that typically demands state-level support or massive centralized criminal organizations, not usually decentralized terror cells.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's break down the ranked assessment of potential state culprits. This is when a geopolitical analysis really starts connecting the dots, even if it's speculative for now.
Right. And we have to stress this is based on motive and capability alignment, not confirmed arrests yet. But it gives us a vital window into the threat landscape. Coming in at number 1, the most plausible primary actor is Russia.
Why Russia? What's the motive fit?
The motive fit here is overwhelmingly strong, undermining the U.S. and its diplomatic processes during the highest visibility global event like UNGA, testing urban vulnerabilities, enabling specific espionage against certain delegates. It all aligns.
And the evidence fit? Does it match their known tactics?
It aligns perfectly. The scale of this network, 100,000 devices, mirrors known Russian-linked botnets and high-volume interference tools we've seen target political systems before. And crucially, the use of criminal proxies, often termed useful criminal groups, which aligns perfectly with the seized contraband. That's a core hallmark of their hybrid operations doctrine. They achieve chaos, undermine confidence, but maintain a comfortable distance.
Plausible deniability again. Okay, who's second on the list?
In the second spot, analysts place China. Their motive likely centers more heavily on comprehensive long-term surveillance, particularly targeting UN delegates regarding high-stakes issues like Taiwan-related diplomacy, maybe economic policy, or even retaliation for ongoing U.S. trade restrictions. The goal is information acquisition and leverage.
And technically, does the method fit?
The technical methodology also fits, yes. SIM farms and large-scale automated identity management strongly resemble tools used in massive Chinese scam networks, like those targeting citizens abroad that we've seen busted in Southeast Asia. The scale and funding needed for the NYC operation also suggests state backing, likely in collaboration with sophisticated overseas criminal syndicates, perhaps triad-linked networks, giving them that non-official cover.
Okay. And third?
Third is Iran. Their motive would likely be more focused on tactical sabotage, maybe during sensitive international negotiations involving Israel or sanctions, or perhaps enabling proxy cells to operate with high security.
And does the style fit?
The use of highly deniable proxy operations fits their established model. Leveraging militant groups like Hezbollah for logistical support and operational presence in urban environments is something they do. The firearms and drugs seized could potentially connect back to the financial or logistical chains of such proxy networks.
So those are the big three state actors. Are there other possibilities mentioned?
Analysts also briefly considered organized crime syndicates acting independently, maybe purely for massive profit or extortion, or perhaps North Korea seeking illicit revenue generation through sophisticated cybercrime units like the Lazarus Group they're known for. But the fact that the UNGA gathers nearly 150 world leaders makes it such an irresistible, high-value target for any actor seeking geopolitical leverage or maximum visibility for disruption. The ultimate assessment remains pretty clear, though. The hybrid nation-state criminal model seems the strongest explanation for the resources, the sophistication, and that dual nature of the seizures, the tech, and the contraband. Now, this is the part that often causes public confusion and, frankly, often leads to some premature criticism. If the Secret Service found 300 servers, 100,000 SIM cards, plus clear illegal contraband like weapons and drugs, why were 0 arrests announced at the time of the takedown?
Yeah, that does seem contradictory. If you dismantle the facility, find all that evidence, why let the operators just walk free?
It seems counterintuitive, but the answer goes directly back to the Secret Service's operational mandate, especially in the immediate context of a global security event like UNGA. That mandate dictates that prevention takes absolute precedence over prosecution.
Prevention first.
Absolutely. Agent McCool and Director Curran were adamant. Neutralizing the imminent threat to UNGA, simply eliminating the digital weapon, was the single immediate measure of success. The network posed a physical and digital danger to the city, to the delegates. Eradicating that risk took absolute priority over catching the operators in the act or rushing an incomplete legal case.
So the decision was purely tactical. Take down the capability now, ensure the safety of diplomats and the public, and only then begin the complex, resource-intensive process of building the actual case.
Exactly. This requires what investigators call strategic investigative patience.
And patience is absolutely critical, I imagine, because of the sheer scale of the forensic mountain they're facing now.
Oh, it's huge. McCool explained that analyzing 100,000 seized SIM cards is the investigative equivalent of analyzing 100,000 separate cell phones. Think about the volume of data involved there.
That sounds monumental, almost paralyzing.
It is. Every call pattern, every text message log, every network connection point, every IP address used for remote access. Each one must be individually mapped, traced, and verified across thousands, maybe millions of data points.
And you have to differentiate between, say, automated illicit communication and maybe some legitimate background traffic, identify encrypted messages that might hide foreign intelligence links, and coordinate all that data with telecom providers globally.
Precisely. It is intensely time-consuming and highly complex, often involving petabytes of metadata. Rushing the analysis risks missing crucial, high-value leads that could potentially link the local operators back to the state actors or cartel leaders who might be financing the entire operation.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's the international dimension too, right? Which must drastically complicate arrests.
Absolutely. If foreign links are confirmed, and analysts strongly suspect they will be, investigators will need mutual legal assistance treaties, or MATs. These are formal government-to-government requests to compel cooperation from foreign jurisdictions, maybe to obtain subscriber data or execute arrests overseas.
And getting MLATs and pursuing extradition? That takes time. Lengthy diplomatic negotiations.
Months, sometimes years. It means suspects operating abroad might enjoy legal protections in their home countries, or, critically given the timing, they might have already left the U.S. or been operating under some form of diplomatic cover during the period leading up to the UNGA. Very tricky.
And we can't underestimate the sensitivity of attribution either, can we?
No way. Prematurely naming a major country like Russia or China as being behind a potential act of infrastructure warfare, especially right before the UNGA summit, that could strain global diplomatic relations immensely and overshadow the entire summit. Even if the evidence was ultimately solid, the timing would be terrible. The priority is to build an absolutely unassailable case first.
But doesn't focusing only on prevention risk, allowing the main operators, the people who are actually running the day-to-day stuff, to just escape and maybe rebuild the network in a neighboring city, say across the river in New Jersey the next week?
That is the essential trade-off in these high-stakes operations. It's calculated risk. The intelligence community determined the immediate physical threat to the UNGA delegates, and the city itself outweighed the long-term goal of an immediate prosecution of the ground-level operators.
Okay.
However, the forensic process is specifically designed to prevent exactly that scenario from being the end of the story. The SIM cards themselves, the servers, the operating systems, they contain the digital trail, the unique identifiers, the timestamps, the connection logs that will eventually lead them back to the human operators, even if those operators have scattered. They are now working backward from the infrastructure. It's slow, but it can be very effective for building a high-level prosecution later.
It's important to clarify the current status, though. Authorities have confirmed that while the capability for a catastrophic disruption existed, the DOS weapon was loaded and aimed, so to speak.
Right.
They found no direct, confirmed plot to actually attack UNGA itself. Not yet, anyway.
That distinction is crucial, especially for any potential federal charges down the line. Building a prosecutable federal case requires definitive proof of criminal intent, whether that intent is conspiracy, terrorism, or espionage, not just possessing the infrastructure. That proof of intent is what the ongoing, painstaking analysis of those 100,000 SIM cards is aiming to establish. So the lack of immediate arrests, it's a clear sign of the complexity and the careful execution of a specific strategy, not necessarily a sign of failure. So while the immediate and immense danger in New York City was neutralized, the deepest concern raised by the Secret Service, and perhaps the most important takeaway for you, the listener, is the vulnerability of the rest of the country.
Right. This isn't just an NYC story.
Not at all. Special Agent McCool issued a really sharp warning that should resonate nationwide, he said. It'd be unwise to think that there's not other networks being built in other U.S. cities.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because the focus shifts dramatically from those Tier 1 cities, NYC, D.C., L.A., the usual suspects, to what we call Tier 2 cities.
Exactly. Mid-sized urban hubs like Austin, Nashville, Indianapolis, Fresno, places like that. The NYC case highlights threats to what they called invisible infrastructure, but those mid-sized cities are disproportionately vulnerable to this exact type of weaponization.
Why is that? What makes them more vulnerable?
Well, they face structural disadvantages. Tier 1 metros receive sustained, deep federal focus. They have permanent, specialized units from the Secret Service, the FBI, DHS, right there on the ground. Plus, they have deep-pocketed local police forces and specialized investigative units constantly monitoring for anomalies, which, again, is exactly how the NYC network was found in the first place. They have redundancy built into their security apparatus.
But in Tier 2 cities, the opposite is true.
Pretty much. Local law enforcement and municipal IT departments often operate with leaner budgets, fewer specialized resources. They generally lack the dedicated investigative units that can spot subtle telecom anomalies until the disruption is already well underway. It's fundamentally a critical resource disparity problem, and adversaries are clearly aware of it and exploiting it.
And there's a talent gap, too, isn't there, in cybersecurity?
A serious one. Compounding the resource issue, we can use specific data points to illustrate this risk. Fresno, California, for example, has only about 49 cybersecurity professionals per 100,000 residents. That's a really high-risk indicator given the growing complexity of digital threats.
Wow, that's low.
It is. Or look at Indianapolis, Indiana. A recent survey showed that 78% of its mid-sized organizations lacked dedicated full-time cybersecurity staff. That low cyber talent density, combined with the growth of critical industries in those regions, it just creates a perfect attack vector.
And the nature of the NYC network itself,
Right.
running out of vacant apartments, that makes it terrifyingly replicable in these other environments, doesn't it?
Terrifyingly so. Remember, the New York operation ran out of easily accessible vacant apartments and hidden facilities. Cheaper real estate, maybe lighter surveillance, lower population density in Tier 2 markets. It makes replication significantly easier and more cost-effective for a well-funded, potentially state-backed criminal group. They can establish the same operational capability with far less risk of immediate detection.
And these Tier 2 locations, they hold immense strategic value that often goes unnoticed, right? We tend to focus on D.C. or Silicon Valley.
But look closely at what these cities host. Austin, Texas, it's a booming semiconductor and advanced tech manufacturing hub, vital to the U.S. chip supply chain. Nashville, Tennessee, it's a major healthcare and financial capital for the entire Southeast. Port cities like Savannah, Georgia, or Jacksonville, Florida, absolutely essential to U.S. supply chains and military logistics. Disruption in any of these areas hits the national economy and military readiness almost immediately.
And the threat isn't just theoretical. We've seen real-world examples of Tier 2 vulnerability recently.
We have. In 2023, the city of Dallas was hit by a ransomware attack that crippled city services for weeks. In early 2024, pro-Russian hacktivists managed to disrupt water utilities in multiple mid-sized U.S. municipalities. And we've seen physical attacks on electric grid substations near places like Lansing, Michigan, showing the very real physical consequences of digital incursions in these regional hubs.
So the takeaway is pretty stark then.
It is. The line between cyber threats and physical threats is completely blurred now. The NYC SIM farm case proves that sophisticated telecom sabotage is an operational reality against national security targets. And we have to recognize that the potential for outages to persist for days, maybe longer, in regional hubs where critical infrastructure redundancy is significantly thinner than in Manhattan, that should be the urgent national security concern right now.
They found one.
Exactly. How many more are operating silently in Tier 2 cities across the country, just waiting? #outro.
What stands out to me the most from this deep dive is the successful outcome, but it's a terrifying kind of success, isn't it?
It really is.
The Secret Service executed a monumental effort, dismantling this massive, highly sophisticated hybrid threat. 100,000 SIMs, 30 million texts per minute capacity before it could paralyze New York City during that pivotal diplomatic moment.
It was a defining victory in prevention, which, as we said, was the primary goal. And the analyst's assessment leaves little doubt about the nature of the threat. It points strongly towards a sophisticated hybrid state criminal group, leveraging organized crime for plausible deniability, with Russia being the most plausible primary actor based on their geopolitical motives and, frankly, their established operational methods.
But the underlying message from the Secret Service remains that dire nationwide warning. These sophisticated hybrid networks exist elsewhere. They are likely being built or maybe are already operational in less monitored, strategically valuable Tier 2 cities. Cities that fundamentally lack the necessary talent, funding, and federal resources to spot the anomaly before it becomes a catastrophe.
And this whole incident really reveals a profound reliance on reactive measures, doesn't it? The authorities were able to dismantle this one network, but only after months of intensive, specialized tracking and the execution of physical raids. The core components of this threat, the SIM cards themselves, the underlying vulnerabilities in 5G and LTE protocols that allow this kind of attack, they remain readily available and exploitable. The industry knows of over 100 known flaws in these signaling protocols that facilitate these kinds of attacks.
So what does this all mean for the future of infrastructure defense, especially in those vulnerable regional hubs?
Well, it raises a really important question, I think, for you, the listener, to ponder, something that goes beyond just law enforcement action. Given the ease of replication, the relatively low cost of the hardware, and the continued systemic vulnerabilities within the telecom infrastructure itself, how long can the U.S. really rely solely on reactive dismantling operations by law enforcement after the fact?
It feels unsustainable.
It might be. Before regulatory changes and perhaps mandated hardening measures force the carriers themselves to start treating this primarily as just a fraud problem and start treating it as the existential national security threat it clearly can be. Are we just waiting for the next, less prepared city to be hit and potentially paralyzed by a full-scale SIM-based denial-of-service attack?